The man walked alone into the ruins. The air around him was heavy, still, and strange. No wind touched the tall broken stones. No birds called. No insects moved. It was complete silence. Too much silence. A silence that pressed against his ears and made his heartbeat sound louder than it should. He slowed his steps. His boots scraped against the dust and broken stone. Even that sound seemed wrong, as if the walls swallowed it. He looked up. The walls were covered in faded carvings, symbols that curved and twisted like stars and rivers. Some lines glowed faintly, like soft fire in the cracks. They pulsed, alive for just a moment, then faded again. The man stopped. He felt eyes on him, though he saw no one. The place was empty, yet it felt crowded with unseen things. His hands clenched into fists. He took a slow breath and whispered to himself, "Keep walking." His own voice came back to him in a thin echo, weak and broken, as if the silence did not allow words to live here. He kept moving deeper. The corridor stretched long and dark. Every few steps he passed doors half broken, leading into small, empty rooms. Dust lay thick on the ground. No footprints. No sign of life. And yet, he felt he was not the first to come here. He touched the wall as he walked. The stone was cold, but under the carvings he felt heat, a soft vibration. His fingers tingled, and he pulled them back quickly. The glowing symbol faded like it was watching him go. The silence grew heavier. His heartbeat quickened. He began to hear things, not real sounds, but suggestions of sound. A soft whisper. A breath. A faint cry. He stopped, turned fast, and stared into the darkness behind him. Nothing. Just the empty corridor. But then, there it was again. A sound. Real this time. A faint, fragile voice coming from far ahead. He froze. The voice was soft, broken. He could not understand the words. They were not in his language. But it was a voice. Someone was here. He walked faster, drawn forward, each step louder against the floor. His breathing echoed, his hands were damp with sweat. The strange voice grew clearer, though still weak, like someone speaking from behind a heavy wall. Then the light changed. A faint glow lit the corridor ahead. Not from torches, not from the walls, but from something deeper inside. He reached a wide chamber. The room was high, the ceiling lost in shadow. The walls were covered in carvings brighter than before, pulsing slowly like the heartbeat of a giant beast. In the middle of the room was a small shape, sitting against a broken stone pillar. He stopped at the entrance. His chest rose and fell fast. It was a girl. She was small, fragile, her skin pale with a strange silver glow, as if touched by the stars. Her hair was long and dark, falling in messy waves. Her eyes were open, glowing faintly blue, but not like human eyes. They seemed deeper, endless, like windows to a sky he had never seen. The man took a step closer. The girl looked at him. She tried to speak, her lips moving, but the words were broken, a language that was not his. The sound of it was strange, both sharp and soft, carrying echoes that made the air around her shimmer. The man raised his hand slowly, showing he had no weapon. "I will not hurt you," he whispered, though he knew she might not understand. The girl tilted her head, her glowing eyes watching him. For a moment she looked afraid. Her hands clutched her knees tightly, but then she relaxed just a little. He saw she was weak. Her face was thin, her lips dry. She had been here a long time, alone. He stepped closer again. His boots crunched against the dust. She flinched at the sound, then froze, waiting. The man knelt, keeping his distance. He slowly opened his bag and pulled out a small water flask. He placed it on the ground between them and pushed it forward. The girl stared at it, then at him. Slowly, with trembling hands, she reached out, picked up the flask, and drank. For the first time, her lips curved into the smallest hint of relief. The silence returned around them, but now it felt different. Not empty, not crushing. It was a silence that carried meaning. Two strangers, facing each other in a forgotten ruin, separated by worlds, but joined by survival. The man studied her. Who was she? Why was she here? Was she human? No. Something in her eyes told him she was not. She was different. The girl whispered again, words he could not understand. But this time, her voice was stronger. Her eyes locked on his, and she lifted her hand to draw something in the dust on the floor. She made a symbol, a circle with lines spreading out like rays, a star perhaps. Then she pointed at herself. The man frowned. She pointed at the symbol again. Then she pointed upward, to the dark ceiling. Not from here, he thought. The ruins around him seemed to hum softly, as if her words had awakened them. The walls glowed, brighter. The silence felt alive. Then suddenly she stopped. Her glowing eyes widened. She pressed her finger to her lips, warning him. And then she whispered one clear word. Danger. The man's chest tightened. He turned fast, staring into the shadows of the corridor he had come from. For the first time since he entered, the silence broke. A low growl, deep and unnatural, rolled through the chamber. Something else was here. The growl rolled through the ruins like thunder, heavy and alive. Dust shook loose from the ceiling, falling in thin streams. The man froze where he stood. His eyes searched the dark hallway, but he saw nothing. Behind him, the alien girl pressed herself against the pillar. Her glowing eyes were wide, filled with fear. She whispered again, her voice trembling, the same word he had just learned. Danger. The sound of it made his skin crawl. It was not only a warning. It was a memory. She had said it before. She had lived with it. The man's hand moved to his side, brushing the small knife he carried. A poor weapon against something that could make a growl like that. Still, he would not be helpless. He turned back to the girl. She was watching him, her breath quick and sharp. For a moment, their eyes locked. And then, without speaking, she pointed to another passage, a narrow path leading deeper into the ruins. She wanted him to follow. The man hesitated. The growl came again, closer this time, filling the corridor with its echo. He had no choice. Go, he whispered, though she might not understand. He moved toward the passage. She rose slowly, weak on her legs, but she followed him. The corridor they entered was tight and long. Their footsteps sounded louder here, echoing off the stone walls. The silence was no longer empty. It carried weight, broken by the slow beat of their steps and the distant growl following them. The man glanced back. The girl's steps were unsteady, but she kept moving. He slowed for her, letting her keep close. She seemed so fragile, yet the way she walked, the way she pointed the way forward, told him she knew this place better than he ever could. As they moved, the walls began to glow again. The symbols shone faintly, pulsing with a rhythm like a heartbeat. He wondered if the ruins were alive, reacting to their presence. At one point, the girl stopped. She placed her hand on a wall, tracing a symbol with her glowing fingers. The symbol lit up, brighter than the others, and the ground beneath them shivered. The man stepped back, alarmed, but the girl turned to him, her lips forming a word he could not understand. Her voice was calm this time, almost gentle. She seemed to be telling him, "This is safe. Trust me." He nodded slowly, though his heart still raced. They moved on until they reached a wider space. This chamber was round, with tall broken pillars leaning toward the center. The carvings here were older, faded, yet when the girl walked into the room they flickered with light. She moved slowly to the middle and knelt down. With her fingers she drew shapes in the dust. The man crouched to watch. A circle. Then more circles around it. A line stretching outward. A cluster of dots. It was not random. It was a map. She pointed to the largest circle, then touched her chest. Her glowing eyes searched his face, waiting for him to understand. The man stared at the drawing. A planet, stars, a system. He did not know which, but he understood the meaning. She was from there, not from here, not from Earth. She touched another part of the drawing, a smaller circle far away from the first. Then she pointed to him. His breath caught. "You think... me?" he whispered, pressing his hand to his chest. "Me from here?" She gave a faint nod. He felt the truth of it. They were from different worlds, and yet somehow, they were here in the same broken ruins, running from the same danger. Before he could speak again, the ground shook. The girl's eyes snapped to the dark entrance behind them. The growl returned, louder, closer. A heavy scrape against stone followed, like claws dragging across the wall. The man rose quickly. His knife was in his hand now, though it felt small and useless. The girl stood too, though her body trembled with weakness. She looked at him, and for the first time, he saw something in her glowing eyes that was not just fear. It was trust. She was relying on him. The sound came again, a deep breath, a shadow shifting at the edge of the chamber. The man held his breath. His muscles were tight, ready to run or fight. Then the thing stepped into view. It was tall, too tall to be human. Its body was hidden in the dark, but its eyes burned like red fire. The sound of its claws scraping stone filled the air. Its breath was heavy, wet, and hungry. The girl let out a broken cry and backed toward him. The man raised his knife. His heart pounded, but he did not step back. The creature growled, a sound that shook the pillars, and began to move toward them. The girl's hand caught his sleeve. Her voice whispered sharp in his ear, "Run," but the way she said it, he knew something more. Running was not just escape. Running was survival, not just for him, but for her too. He looked into her glowing eyes, saw her fear, her weakness, and her desperate hope. And in that moment, the man made a choice. He grabbed her hand. Together they turned and ran into the dark. Behind them, the creature roared, shaking the chamber as it gave chase. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the dark passages as they ran. The man held the girl's hand tight, guiding her through broken stone and falling dust. Behind them, the roar of the creature shook the walls. Every few seconds, he heard the scrape of claws on stone, chasing, closer, closer. The corridor twisted sharply, and they stumbled through an archway into a narrow tunnel. The girl pulled at his arm, pointing left. He followed, trusting her instinct. The growls faded for a moment, then rose again from another passage. At last, the tunnel opened into a small chamber. It was quiet here, hidden, the air still. The young man pushed the girl behind a collapsed pillar and crouched beside her. He pressed a finger to his lips, warning silence. The creature's footsteps echoed faintly, searching, sniffing the air. A shadow passed across the archway, but it did not enter. For long minutes they waited in the heavy dark, hardly breathing. Then the sound faded away. The man let out a slow breath, his chest burning from the run. His shirt was damp with sweat. He turned to the girl. She was shaking, her glowing eyes, dim with exhaustion. Her lips parted, but no words came. He opened his bag again and pulled out another piece of food. Dry bread, nothing special. He placed it in her hand. She looked at it, then at him. For a moment, her face softened. She ate slowly, as if each bite was painful, but she finished it all. The man studied her in the faint glow of the walls. She was fragile, yet there was something strong inside her. The way she had guided him through the ruins, the way she knew the paths. She was not just surviving. She was fighting to live. He whispered softly, "You've been here a long time, haven't you?" She tilted her head, not fully understanding his words, but she seemed to recognize the tone. Her eyes lowered and she nodded slightly. Silence stretched between them, but it was no longer empty. It was a silence filled with meaning, with questions neither could ask. The girl reached down and began drawing again in the dust. This time, she drew two shapes. One small circle, one larger circle beside it. She tapped the smaller one and pointed at herself. Then she tapped the larger and pointed at him. The man frowned, trying to understand. She touched the small circle again and drew a line connecting it to the larger one. Then she pressed her hand to her chest and looked at him, waiting. "You and me?" he whispered, pointing at himself, then at her. Her lips curved into the smallest, fragile smile. For the first time, he felt warmth in this cold place. He wanted to ask her more. Who was she? Where was she from? Why was she alone? But words were useless. They needed something else. The man picked up a stone and began scratching into the floor beside her drawing. He drew a crude shape. A mountain. The river that ran near his home. Then he pointed to himself. The girl leaned closer, her glowing eyes wide with curiosity. She touched the river shape with her finger, then nodded as if she understood. She took the stone from his hand and added a star above the mountain. The man laughed softly, the sound strange after so much silence. They continued like that for some time, drawing small pictures on the dusty floor. It was not language, but it was something. A bridge between two worlds. At last, the girl grew tired. Her hands trembled, and her head dipped forward. The man noticed how weak she truly was. She had been surviving on almost nothing, hiding in these ruins with danger always near. He gently spread his jacket on the ground and gestured for her to rest. She hesitated, but then lay down, curling against the pillar. Her glowing eyes dimmed, closing slowly. The man sat nearby, knife in hand, watching the dark entrance. The silence returned, but it no longer felt as heavy. For the first time, he was not alone in it. Hours seemed to pass. The ruins shifted with faint groans, as if alive, but the creature did not return. The girl stirred in her sleep, whispering words in her strange language. Some sounded sharp, others soft, like a lullaby. He wondered what she was dreaming. When she woke, her eyes glowed faintly again, brighter than before. She sat up and looked at him, then touched her chest. A single word came from her lips, broken, but clear. Lyra. The man blinked. Her name. Lyra. He repeated softly. Her eyes brightened and she nodded. Then she touched his chest, waiting. He hesitated, then answered. David. Her lips moved, repeating it slowly. Vid. It was the first real connection. Names. They were no longer strangers. But before the moment could grow, the ground shuddered again. Dust rained from the ceiling. The girl's smile faded. From far away came the echo of that terrible growl, rolling through the ruins like thunder. The man rose quickly, knife ready. Lyra grabbed his arm, her glowing eyes filled with fear. She whispered his name, broken but strong. David, run! And then, from the darkness of the corridor, two red eyes opened. The red eyes burned in the darkness like twin flames. David froze, his breath caught in his throat. Lyra clutched his arm, her glowing eyes wide with fear. The silence that had hung in the chamber shattered with the sound of claws dragging across stone. The creature stepped forward, slow and heavy. Its body was half hidden in shadow, but David saw enough. A twisted frame, long arms ending in hooked claws, skin that shimmered like black glass. The sound of its breathing was thick, wet, hungry. David's grip tightened on his knife. He knew it was useless, but holding it gave him courage. He placed himself in front of Lyra, shielding her. She whispered his name again, voice trembling. David. The creature growled low, the sound rolling like thunder. Its eyes fixed on them, glowing brighter as it came closer. David's heart hammered. He scanned the chamber quickly. Broken, pillars, fallen stone, one narrow passage to the right. It might be their only chance. Stay behind me, he whispered. Lyra understood enough. She nodded, her weak hands gripping the pillar as she rose to her feet. The creature lunged. David grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward the passage. The ground shook as claws struck the stone where they had been standing a moment before. Dust exploded into the air. They ran. The passage was narrow, forcing them to move single file. The creature roared behind them, its body scraping against the stone as it forced its way through. David's chest burned with each breath, but he did not slow. The walls glowed faintly, symbols pulsing faster now, reacting to the chase. The light lit the way, guiding them deeper. David didn't know if the ruins were helping them or warning them. Lyra stumbled, almost falling. David caught her, pulling her along. She whispered words in her language, desperate, hurried. He couldn't understand, but he knew what she meant. It will not stop. The passage opened suddenly into another chamber. This one was vast, with high ceilings and a floor cracked by deep lines. Strange machines stood in the corners, long dead, covered in dust. Their shapes were alien, curved like bones, glowing faintly with power that refused to die. David and Lyra ran toward the far side. Behind them, the creature burst into the room, roaring, its claws scraping sparks against the stone floor. David turned, shoving Lyra behind a fallen slab. He raised his knife, though fear churned in his gut. The creature stalked forward, its red eyes locked on him. Then something unexpected happened. The carvings on the walls glowed brighter. Lines of light spread across the floor, forming circles, then patterns like stars. The entire chamber came alive. The creature hissed, halting for a moment, its eyes darting to the glowing lines. It seemed afraid, not of David, but of the ruins themselves. Lyra gasped. She stepped out from behind the slab, her glowing eyes reflecting the strange lights. She raised her hand, pressing it against one of the symbols on the wall. The chamber pulsed brighter now. The creature roared in anger and charged. "No!" David shouted. He grabbed Lyra, pulling her away just as the claws struck the stone where she had been standing. The ground cracked, glowing dust rising like smoke. They stumbled across the chamber, searching for another way out. Lyra pointed toward a narrow stairway carved into the far wall. Without thinking, David pulled her toward it. The creature followed, but slower now, its steps cautious, as if the glowing floor pained it. Every time its claws touched the light, sparks flared. David and Lyra reached the stairway and climbed quickly. Their feet pounded on the ancient steps, dust falling around them. The stairway spiraled upward, and at the top was another passage. They stumbled inside, gasping for air. The creature roared below, but it did not climb after them. Instead, it prowled at the base of the stairs, pacing, waiting. David leaned against the wall, chest heaving. His knife was slick in his hand. He turned to Lyra. She was trembling, but her eyes were bright, filled with something new. Not only fear, but recognition. "You know this place," David whispered. Lyra nodded slowly. She pressed her hand against the wall, tracing another symbol. Her lips moved, whispering words in her strange tongue. The wall glowed where she touched it, brighter than before. A section of stone shifted, grinding loudly. A hidden door opened, revealing a narrow tunnel beyond. David stared. "How?" But Lyra only shook her head. She grabbed his hand and pulled him inside. The door closed behind them, shutting out the creature's roar. For a moment there was silence again. Heavy, pressing, but different this time. The tunnel stretched long and dark, glowing faintly with light from hidden veins in the stone. David's breath slowed, though his heart still raced. He looked at Lyra, who walked ahead now with more certainty than before. She was not just surviving here. She knew these ruins. She belonged to them. As they walked, David noticed strange markings, carved into the walls, spirals, circles, symbols that looked like maps. He couldn't read them, but Lyra touched each one with care, as if greeting old memories. Finally, the tunnel ended at another chamber. This one was smaller, quieter, filled with a soft blue glow. In the center stood a machine, tall and curved, humming faintly with life. Lyra stepped toward it slowly, her hands trembling. Her eyes filled with tears as she whispered a word. Home. David frowned, confused. But before he could ask, the chamber shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. The creature's roar echoed again, closer than ever. Somehow it had found another way inside. The roar thundered through the chamber, shaking the walls. David spun around, knife raised, eyes searching the shadows. Lyra stepped back, her glowing eyes wide with fear. The blue light of the strange machine painted their faces pale. From the far passage, the creature appeared. Its claws scraped the walls, throwing sparks. Its red eyes burned brighter than ever, fixed on them. It moved with hunger, its breath loud and heavy. David's chest tightened. There was no time to think. "Run!" he shouted. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward the other side of the chamber. She stumbled but kept pace. Behind them, the creature roared and charged. Its claws smashed into the stone where they had been seconds before. Dust and broken rock exploded across the floor. They darted into a narrow tunnel. The sound of pursuit followed immediately, claws scratching, the roar echoing closer. The tunnel twisted like a serpent, turning sharp left, then right. David's lungs burned. His legs screamed for rest, but he did not stop. Lyra's hand was cold in his, her body trembling as she struggled to keep up. He tightened his grip. "Stay with me," he said, though he knew she might not understand the words. But she looked at him, nodded weakly, and kept running. The tunnel suddenly dropped downward, a steep slope covered in loose stone. They slid down fast, barely keeping balance. Lyra fell to her knees, and David caught her before she tumbled. The sound of claws on stone followed, the creature sliding down after them. At the bottom of the slope, they burst into another chamber. This one was darker, filled with broken machines and shattered stone. A wide pit yawned in the center, glowing faintly with strange light. David pulled Lyra to the side, away from the pit, but the creature crashed into the chamber a heartbeat later. It roared, the sound rattling the broken walls. The man's eyes darted around. No exits, no doors, only the pit. The creature stepped closer, slow, enjoying their fear. Its claws tapped against the stone, deliberate, cruel. David's chest heaved. His knife felt useless, his body weak from the chase. He looked at Lyra. She was watching him, her lips trembling, her glowing eyes filled with trust and desperation. In that moment, he made a choice. He whispered, "Trust me." Then he pulled her toward the pit. Her eyes widened in shock, but she did not resist. Together they leapt. The world fell away. They dropped into darkness, wind rushing past them. For a moment it felt endless. Then they hit hard ground, rolling across stone. Pain shot through David's body, but he forced himself up. Lyra groaned, clutching her side, but she was alive. Above them, the creature roared in fury, its red eyes glaring from the edge of the pit. It could not follow. For now they were safe. David staggered to his feet, pulling Lyra up. The chamber they had fallen into was strange. The walls glowed faintly, alive with lines of light. The floor was smooth, almost too smooth, like metal. Lyra whispered a word, her voice soft but filled with awe. She touched the glowing wall and the light responded, spreading out in waves. David watched, confused, amazed. These ruins were not ruins at all. They were alive, filled with power, but before he could speak, the ground shook again. The creature had not given up. Its claws tore at the stone above, trying to find another way down. David grabbed Lyra's hand. "We have to move." They ran, again, following a narrow passage at the far end. This one sloped upward, leading deeper into the strange glowing halls. The air here felt different, charged with energy. As they ran, David noticed doors on either side, sealed, covered in symbols. Some glowed faintly as they passed, as if recognizing Lyra. She slowed once, placing her hand on one, and the door trembled, almost opening. But the sound of the creature's roar echoed closer. David pulled her away. "Not now." They pushed forward until the passage ended in another chamber. This one was huge, with a high ceiling and strange machines humming faintly, their lights still alive after who knew how many centuries. In the center was a platform with a glowing pillar rising from it. Lyra stopped, staring at it, her lips parting, in wonder. She whispered again, her voice shaking. Home. David frowned, looking between her and the pillar. What was this place? Was it hers? Before he could ask, the sound of stone breaking filled the chamber. The creature burst in from the far wall, red eyes blazing, claws tearing through the ancient floor. Lyra cried out and grabbed David's arm. The pillar's glow brightened, pulsing like a heartbeat. The creature roared, charging straight toward them. David pulled Lyra behind the pillar. He raised his knife, though he knew it was nothing against the monster. But then, the pillar reacted. Light exploded outward, wrapping around Lyra like threads of fire. Her eyes glowed brighter, her whole body trembling as if the machine was waking, something inside her. David stared in shock. The creature stopped mid-charge, hesitating, growling low, as if afraid of the light. And then the chamber shook violently. The machines around them came alive, humming louder, brighter. Lyra gasped, clutching David's arm. Her lips formed one word. Awaken. The floor cracked. The walls glowed. The air filled with power. The creature roared again, louder than ever, but it no longer sounded certain. Something far greater was waking inside the ruins. The chamber pulsed with light. The machines hummed like a giant heart awakening after centuries of sleep. Dust shook loose from the ceiling, and cracks of blue fire spread across the floor. David shielded his eyes. The glow was blinding. Beside him, Lyra stood trembling, her body wrapped in streams of light flowing from the pillar. Her hair lifted as if caught in an unseen wind, and her glowing eyes burned brighter than ever. The creature roared in rage. It clawed at the ground, but every time its talons touched the glowing floor, sparks exploded, forcing it back. Still, it circled them, waiting for a moment of weakness. Lyra! David shouted. He reached for her arm, but the light held her, pulling her closer to the pillar. Her lips moved, whispering words in her alien tongue. Her voice was layered, as if more than one voice spoke through her. The machines around them answered with louder hums, their lights beating in rhythm with her words. David's skin prickled. The air was alive, charged with strange energy. He felt small, powerless, standing in the middle of something too great to understand. Lyra gasped and looked at him suddenly, her voice breaking through the noise. Memory, she said in broken English. I remember. David froze. Remember what? Her glowing eyes filled with tears. She touched her chest, then the pillar. My people. All gone. The words struck him like a blade. Gone. She was the last. The light from the pillar surged and images appeared in the air, not solid but shimmering like ghosts made of fire. David's eyes widened as he saw them. Tall figures with glowing eyes like Lyra's walking under alien skies. Cities of crystal and light, towers reaching into the stars, a world alive with beauty. Then the images darkened. Fire consumed the cities. Shadows fell from the skies. The same monstrous red eyes they had seen in the ruins appeared, hunting, destroying. The figures of her people screamed and vanished in the flames. Lyra cried out, collapsing to her knees. The images faded, leaving only the cold glow of the machines. David knelt beside her. She trembled, her hands clutching the floor. All gone, she whispered again. He placed his hand gently on her shoulder. You're not alone now, he said softly. Her glowing eyes lifted to his, and for a moment hope flickered in them. But the moment shattered as the creature roared again. It had grown bold, pushing against the light, forcing its way closer. Sparks burned across its black, glassy skin, but it did not stop. Its hunger was greater than its fear. David stood, knife ready though his hand shook. He would fight even if it meant dying here. But Lyra rose too. She touched the pillar again and the light surged brighter. A section of the floor shifted, revealing a hidden pod rising from beneath the stone. The pod was smooth, curved, filled with glowing lines. David stared. "What is that?" Lyra's voice was weak but sure. "Stasis. Sleep." Understanding struck him. This was where she had been, where she had survived while the rest of her people were destroyed. She was the last remnant of a lost world. The creature shrieked, leaping forward. Lyra raised her hand, and the light from the machines blasted outward in a wave. The creature was thrown back, crashing against the wall. It roared in fury but rose again, relentless. The power drained from Lyra's body. She staggered, falling against David. He caught her, holding her tight. Her skin was cold, her breathing weak. "You can't keep this up," he whispered. "It's killing you." She shook her head. "No. Protect. Both." Her words were broken, but David understood. She wanted to shield them both, no matter the cost. The creature advanced again, slower this time, wary of the light. Its red eyes locked on them, glowing with hunger. David pulled Lyra back, scanning the chamber desperately. His eyes landed on the stasis pod. It was open, glowing faintly. A thought struck him. "Can this save you?" he asked. Lyra shook her head weakly. "Not save. Hide." The pod was not salvation. It was a coffin. David's jaw tightened. He would not let her go back into the dark. But before he could speak, the machines around them shuddered. The pillar cracked, spilling light like liquid. The whole chamber shook violently. The ruins were breaking. Lyra looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with sorrow. She touched his chest, her voice trembling. "You live." "No," David said fiercely. "We live." Her lips parted, but before she could answer, the creature roared again, leaping across the glowing floor. David shoved Lyra aside and raised his knife. The monster's claws came down like falling blades. The chamber erupted in blinding light. Joe. Chamber exploded with light. For a heartbeat, everything vanished. The monster, the machines, the walls. David felt himself lifted off the ground, weightless, lost in a storm of brightness. When his vision cleared, he was on the floor, gasping for breath. The ruins around him glowed like a dying star, cracks of blue fire racing across the stone. The air was hot, alive with energy. The creature was still there. It staggered, its black glass skin burned and cracked from the blast. Red eyes blazed brighter, furious, hungrier. It roared, shaking the chamber, and began crawling toward them, again slower but unstoppable. David forced himself up, knife in hand. His arms trembled. He had nothing left, but he would not run. Not now. Beside him, Lyra lay weak, her glowing eyes flickering like fading candles. She tried to rise, but her legs gave way. David caught her, pulling her close. The creature's steps shook the ground. It raised its claws ready to strike, and then the machines answered. The pillar split open, releasing a surge of light that wrapped around Lyra. Her body lifted gently into the air, glowing brighter than ever before. Her hair floated as if caught in an unseen tide. Her eyes opened wide, no, longer, dim but blazing with the light of 1,000 stars. David stumbled back, shielding his face. Lyra's voice rang out, strong now, clear, not broken, not weak, but full of power. Words in her alien tongue filled the chamber, echoing with force. The machines thrummed, obeying her command. The creature hissed, stepping back. For the first time, it looked afraid. David lowered his arm, staring. Lyra hovered above the glowing floor, her hands outstretched. Light poured from her, flowing into the machines, into the walls, into the very bones of the ruins. The creature roared and charged, but Lyra raised her hand, and the air itself bent. A blast of light struck the monster, hurling it across the chamber. It crashed into the wall, screaming as sparks of blue fire burned across its skin. It thrashed, claws tearing stone. But the light consumed it, piece by piece. David could hardly breathe. The girl he had found alone and fragile in the dark was now something far greater. Not just a survivor, not just lost. She was a weapon. She was a memory of a world long dead, alive again in her. The creature screamed one last time, its body breaking apart into shards of black glass. Then it was gone. Silence returned, heavy but changed. Not empty. Not fearful. David looked up at Lyra. She drifted back down, the light fading. Her feet touched the floor softly, and the glow in her eyes dimmed to their usual soft blue. She swayed, weak again, and David rushed to catch her. She collapsed against him, her breathing shallow. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. No more. Alone. David held her tight. Never again. The ruins groaned, shaking. The machines flickered, their lights fading. The chamber was breaking apart. "We need to go," David said. Lyra nodded weakly. Together they stumbled toward a narrow passage that had opened in the wall, glowing faintly as if guiding them. They passed through, leaving the collapsing chamber behind. The tunnel was long, sloping upward. At last, they emerged into the open. Ere David stopped, his breath catching. The sky was vast above them, filled with strange colors, streaks of green and gold, swirling like rivers of light. The ruins stretched out behind them, half buried in the earth, glowing faintly as they toyed. Lyra leaned against him, her eyes lifting to the sky. A single tear slid down her cheek. David looked at her. "You're safe now," he said, though part of him wondered if it was true. She shook her head softly. Her voice was broken but certain. "Not safe. Yet." David frowned. "What do you mean?" She raised her hand, pointing upward, and then he heard it. A distant sound, faint but growing. Engines, not like any he knew. The sky rippled as shadows appeared above the clouds. Shapes moved, sleek alien ships gliding through the night. David's chest tightened. Lyra whispered one word, her voice filled with both hope and fear. More. The ships descended slowly, their lights piercing the sky. Were they her people's lost creations? Survivors like her? Or were they something worse? The same kind of monsters that had destroyed her world? David held her close, knife still, in hand though it felt useless. His eyes locked on the descending lights. The silence of the ruins was broken again, not by growls, not by collapse, but by the sound of ships coming down from the stars. And he knew their journey was only beginning.